My name is Meredith Jennings. I am a senior program manager at HARC. I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with HARC. And so we have been working on urban heat island mapping campaign and urban heat type work since um, around 2020. And so Paul asked me to give this talk tonight because we were able to redo our mapping campaign again this summer, and we got a lot of media attention, and it was really productive. And so we haven't gotten the results out yet. So today I'm going to give an overview of the first year, give a little bit of background on why urban heat is important and some solutions like trees, how those can be helped to mitigate heat. So again, this is Hark's building. So we're a research nonprofit located in the Woodlands, and we apply science to drive energy, air, water, and resilient solutions for a sustainable and equitable future. And we have a program called Climate Equity and Community Engagement. And so our urban heat island work is a great example of that type of work where we are working directly with underserved communities to help them develop and implement different initiatives that can meet their needs and help address the issues related to climate change. And so, speaking of climate change, whenever I first moved to Houston was in 2017. And so I came here right after graduate school and did a science policy fellowship with Harris County Public Health. And so literally my fellowship started, a week after Hurricane Harvey. And so a lot of the discussions I was hearing about climate change my first year in Houston were related to flooding. And so I was also at the health department tasked with helping them understand how climate change impacted the work that public health does. And it was in that work that I started looking at the impact of heat and extreme heat and the temperature increases associated with climate change and what that would look like for the Houston area. And so in 2020, the city of Houston and HARC was also a part of this, um, uh, commissioned a climate impact assessment from Catherine Hayhoe's group and Ann Stoner, which looked at modeling temperature precipitation trends out to the end of the century for the Houston area. And so these are some of the results they got by 2050, where we're looking to expect the hottest day of summer being 7 degrees hotter than it is today, 22 more degrees exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 more nights exceeding 80 degrees, and summers being almost 2 months longer than they are today. And so these are I guess that should be by 2100. But these are trends that are grounded in science that are really scary, thinking about what this would do to the quality of life here. Um, and so a lot of people aren't worried about heat because they can just run their air conditioning, right? But extreme heat actually kills more Americans than any other weather-related event. And part of that is that there's a wide range of vulnerability with respect to heat. And so this is a clipping from an article in the Houston Chronicle a couple of years back that describes one woman's experience in the Gulfton community where she's waiting in the heat for her bus. And so it really does impact a lot of people, especially in the inside the city limits where there are a lot of a heat gets trapped there. And so people that are outside, outdoor workers, people waiting for the bus every day, they do have to experience more of that than someone like me that is lucky enough to work at my desk comfortably and come home to a cool house. And so even our problem or our solution to the problem being air conditioning, that is expected to increase as well with climate change. And so um, where we have the number of cooling degree days increasing. They've done projections to show that the increase in residential air conditioning could increase by 60% in 2050, and even 17% commercial. And so these will have an economic value associated, obviously, with that, and it makes it a lot more difficult for people to pay, their electricity bills. And so for those lower income households, this may mean that they are not able to pay for medication or other important things that they have to pay in order to keep the lights on. And so one of the solutions that we've been looking at HARC is the impact of trees and how they can really provide a lot of cooling power. This is an example in the A-leaf community where we've been working with them to help get them more funding for tree planting initiatives. And so this is a image from a FLIR camera that we have, and it just shows really how that shade can provide almost a 30-degree difference in the ambient air temperature compared to the sidewalk without the shade. And so this is another example of where we received feedback from community members and leaders in the A-leaf community that wanted to see um, more trees get planted in esplanades, um, because that was something that they wanted to improve in terms of the beautification, but also from our results, we were able to demonstrate that A-leaf is one of the urban heat areas where there is warmer temperatures. So why do we want to map and model urban heat? And really it's to help in order to provide these solutions or think about these solutions and fund these solutions, we need to understand these patterns. And so thinking too, like what could be the role of local governments to provide solutions and think about what is driving those temperature differences that contribute to these urban heat islands. And so in the short term, having this data can help officials manage extreme heat days. And in the long term, it can help guide those adaptation and mitigation efforts to reduce heat exposure, because we know it does take quite a while for these trees to establish and provide that value of the canopy. And so our urban heat island mapping projects, we had a few different goals. And so one of those goals was to understand community impacts and disparities. So we wanted to see like how could you know if we have some areas of Houston, for example, that do have those established canopies, compared to areas that don't have sidewalks, don't have trees, um, are we actually seeing that make an impact? We also look at some other indicators. How vulnerable are these communities? Do they have the resources like air conditioning and central air conditioning? Do they have access to vehicles, or are they more dependent on using the public transportation? We are able to get some data related to heat calls, distress calls from the fire department. There's the Harris County Public Health in particular. They do have a heat vulnerability map that they use to look at and how to communicate heat related risks to different populations. As some populations like the elderly are more sensitive to heat-related illnesses. And so the other major thing that we've found that our heat mapping projects are really good for is promoting those nature-based solutions um, and it's been helpful for neighborhoods to take that data and use it to tell their story and attract funding. So I'll give a couple examples later on of some success stories. I already kind of alluded a little bit to A-Leaf. And so other projects that we've seen be discussed include cool and green roofs, cool pavements, and other innovative shade structures. For example, I know that Metro was piloting some different bus stops because those traditional ones with the windows on the side, those can also act as almost heat trapping areas. They're hotter inside because they're not ventilated compared to even just sitting on the side of a sign or a tree is cooler than some of um, those metro um, I forget what the name of it those boxes. So how do we map the heat? So we've are able to participate in the 2020 campaign because we got selected by NOAA to participate, and they fund several of these urban heat island mapping campaigns each summer. So we've been part of a cohort about I think they map about 10 cities each summer. And so in 2020 we grabbed the award of being the largest campaign that they had done to date. And then I think I can't remember which city took that over. And then this past year in 2024, we reclaimed our title of being the largest campaign. And so in 2020, this was our study area. This map kind of looks the way it does because it was a partnership between HARC, the Nature Conservancy, the City of Houston, and Harris County Public Health. So there was a compromise of, getting making sure that the City of Houston's complete communities, neighborhoods were included, which were Mayor Turner's sort of priority areas of investment, with other areas of unincorporated Harris County like Aldine, Channelview, Pasadena, etc., that were important to Harris County Public Health to be included. And then, for this study, we did want to get we wanted to be able to compare the impacts of neighborhoods that have more investment, like, River Oaks, or even we were able to include the Memorial Park and areas like that. And so when I show you later the map that we have for the 2024 campaign that had some limitations of where we could go. But this is a photo of what the sensor looks like. And so it just attaches to the windshield of the car. And we actually, what's great about these campaigns is that they're conducted by volunteers. So it's community science, or you might have heard it be called citizen science. It's a one-day event that really rallies a lot of people to work to collect this data that's really helpful for working on climate change issues. And so the way it works, those sensors attached to the cars, each volunteer or team drives a predetermined route that is assigned to them, and they will drive it 3 different times of day, early in the morning, in the afternoon around 3, and then in the early evening around, I think, 7 o'clock p.m. And so those sensors are able to measure temperature and humidity, and obviously the location. And so from temperature and humidity, you can calculate the heat index. And then our contractor, who's Kappa Strategies, they have an algorithm that they use that extrapolates the observed data to a modeled result that's based on satellite imagery. Whoops. Okay. So this is again, this is the 2020 campaign. Hopefully by January, we'll be able to release the 2024 results. But what was really incredible about this campaign in 2020 was that we measured a 17-degree difference in our coolest area mapped and our hottest area mapped. So the hottest area was along Richmond Avenue. And so we didn't get, here's the Galleria area. Um, and then Channel View is over to the east. And so we did notice that some of the eastern communities are cooler because they have that impact from getting the sea breeze, which really helps a lot. And then obviously you have a lot of the development inside the loop and all of the very densely developed patterns, as you have all these major thoroughfares going out. And then obviously here's the Houston Ship Channel. And so with the average temperature was 94 and the 17-degree difference at the time was one of the largest that the consultant Kappa Strategies had seen of the campaigns. The heat index is a measure that that's your feels like temperature. And so the Weather Service, when you have a expected heat index value of 108 degrees, that's when they start to issue those heat alerts. And they base these based on temperatures at the airports. And so what was interesting when we looked at the heat index, we saw several areas in our study area that were well above the 108-degree threshold. So on this particular day, it was not actually it triggered as an extreme heat day. On our 2024 campaign, it was. So that'll be really interesting to compare because it actually was an extreme heat day. This is what the modeled results look like. So it's able to kind of concentrate a little bit more what you would expect those temperatures to be based on what we measured along those routes and the different land use types that are observed by the satellite. So Gulfton, again, is one of those neighborhoods that is just so densely developed. There's very few spaces even available for trees to be planted. There's a lot of multifamily apartments. It was developed, I can't remember, in like the 70s to have a place for a lot of workers to come. And now it's a community that a lot of immigrants, it might be their first home when they come to Houston. So there's really not a lot of green spaces available in Gulfton, but this has actually prompted a new initiative over the past few years called Greener Gulfton. And so that community has really been trying to bring innovative ways to make Gulfton a more desirable place and cooler. So how has this data been used? So um, we have a couple of really good examples of how this 2020 data has been used to attract a significant investment in nature-based solutions for the Houston region. And so beginning in, can't remember when we started this process. I think maybe in 2023, HARC got a grant from the Mitsubishi Foundation, and we put together a report. I think that's my next slide. And this report looked at what is tree equity, and so how could we make the case for which locations in the Houston area would benefit from additional tree canopy based on the socioeconomic conditions of those communities, the observed urban heat island effect, and um, the quality and density of the urban tree canopy. And so if you want to get your phone out, you can get the QR code and pull up this report. It's something Brian Baer, another researcher at HARC, and I worked on with some other members of our team. And this was, again, funded by Mitsubishi. So this was what we called our phase 1. And so phase 2, they liked the report so much, but they really wanted to see something positive come from that research. And so we were able to get a second grant to work with the A-Leaf Super Neighborhood Council. And I mentioned those esplanades earlier where they wanted to see more trees be planted, based on the work that we did from the Urban Heat Island mapping campaign, and where there was tree canopy coverage from some of Ryan's work involving LiDAR. We were able to identify which areas in this is the A-Leaf neighborhood boundary that would be really beneficial places to do tree planting. And so we worked with Mitsubishi, we worked with the Green Futures program from the Texas Forest Service, which matches corporate sponsors to nonprofits and communities to conduct tree plantings. Because it's really important, and we talk about this in our report. You can have these corporate tree planting events, but you really need to have a local steward of those trees to ensure that they are cared for, maintained, and watered. And so that's the ideal partnership that you can have. And so HARC kind of played a matchmaker with those tree planting organizations in Mitsubishi and the A-Leaf Super Neighborhood Council to do a tree planting event earlier this year. And so these are some photos from that. Again, this is our report. I encourage you. You can also find it by just Googling it and looking on our website. But it's kind of nice because it also goes into some of the considerations if you wanted to plan a tree planting, what you might want to consider. Another example of where our 2020 heat mapping data has been used is by the City of Houston and the Houston Parks and Recreation Department. So this is a tree planting, I guess, tracking portal. And so they actually added our data as a layer. And that way people, as they are thinking about where they want to do tree planting, or if they want to track where tree plantings have occurred, both by the City of Houston and by external partners, they're able to look at that in the context of the Urban Heat Island data. And the website to that is right here. And then the last great example of how this data has been used is HARC was able to put together a proposal with several partners at Harris County and the City of Houston and some other nonprofits to propose it was a $50 million proposal to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but we were awarded $15 million, which was one of the largest awards from the Urban and Community Forestry Program. And so this was to increase tree canopy in underserved communities in Houston and Harris County. And so that was announced about a year ago, and we've been able to start that project as of April of this year. And so I do want to acknowledge the rest of what you're about to see is funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, the USDA Forest Service, the Urban and Community Forestry Program, and of course HARC is an equal opportunity provider. So part of our what we proposed in that larger proposal was to repeat our Urban Heat Island mapping campaign because we saw so much value in it in 2020. And so the study area for this next campaign, I'll show a map, but it had to do with the Inflation Reduction Act. And we could only, if we wanted to get a waiver, a cost, a match waiver, it had to be in these census tracts that are designated as disadvantaged communities. And so that's why the map you'll see is kind of is different than the 2020. And so this time we brought in some additional partners. We continued to do the mapping campaign with CAPA, and we worked with the National Weather Service, City of Houston again, Harris County Office of Sustainability. We worked very closely with Commissioner Briones and her team, and then also the Student Conservation Association, and we continued our partnership with Harris County Public Health. So the website where you can actually see the data and everything, and both campaigns will be published there, is h3at.org, and that's because in 2020 we named ourselves the Houston Harris Heat Action Team, so that's where the H3AT stands for. So in 2020 it was just me doing that work with our partners. I was able to do that through a mini grant at HARC that we had. And so it's been a real privilege to see that program evolve and get so much attention, and it brings so much value to the community and to HARC. So our team has grown quite a bit. Um, and so these are some of the lovely people I get to work with. So this is what our 2024 campaign area looks like. So we did this in August of this year. It was the largest one that has been done to date in the US. And this time we had over 150 volunteers, 70 routes compared to the 32 we did in 2020. And we do have some preliminary data to share. So the observed maximum for this 2024 campaign was 103. So it's about the same as our first campaign, and we saw a little bit smaller of a difference this time around. So it was a 14 difference, and I believe the coolest area, instead of being over here by the coast, was actually up here in Tomball. So these are some photos of the different volunteers that we worked with. Again, this is what the sensor looks like. It had a pretty easy to use light system to show if it was working or not. That they got printed maps, but also there was an app that they could use to get the turn by turn. This mother-daughter duo was one of, and actually a couple of these, I think this team as well, they came back after 2020. So we had a lot of people that continued to be engaged in this project even 4 years apart. Here's some more photos. So just showing really the different geographies that we were able to capture. Again, in 2020, we had a lot of media coverage, and that continued to be the case in 2024. So these are just some screenshots of some of the great coverage that we were getting. In the summertime, people like to talk about the heat, so that's helpful. These aren't as exciting stories to tell in January. So we had ABC 13, Univision. This is per KHU, the Chronicle. That was the cover page of the Chronicle, actually. And then here's Ryan being interviewed on Fox. Houston Style, etc. So it's been really exciting because part of our goals is to have this be an awareness campaign. So we're really thrilled to see so many journalists and members of the community want to follow this and learn more about it. And what we really want is for people to use the data and have easy access to it so that they can bring that same level of attention and stewardship to their communities to address this issue, like the communities in Alief and Gulfton. So part of that accessibility, so one of our next phases is to create this tree equity planning tool. And so this is just an example of what that could look like, but it will have, it'll be a main website for the forestry project. And it will have interactive maps, including the heat mapping data. We also have updated LiDAR that we'll be putting that'll have the tree canopy quality and density. And then it'll have a spot for calendars and events where people can participate in tree planting events or educational activities. The data will be able to, we'll have a download portal. And anyway, so this is something we're hoping will be because we have so many different partners involved. Again, we want people to be able to use this and find it easy to work with. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Well, Meredith, this is Paul. I'm back and I didn't miss much at all. I got most of your presentation, which is very good, and I really appreciate it. And I apologize for the technical difficulties and wanted to remind everyone that did make it on that it's been recorded and that we'll let people know in the next few days when it's on our website. And I would urge you to contact folks that may have wanted to try to be here that couldn't be. And then we'll also let that all our email customers know as well. But I did have a question or two. I had you mentioned how many and how successful you had at getting volunteers to do this. And I wondered even the first time and this time, what were some of the techniques that you used to get that kind of response to make it so successful?
Oh, thank you. So the first time we had those four partners, HARC, Nature Conservancy, City of Houston Resilience Office, and Harris County Public Health. And so one of I think the things that really helped a lot was we did create a website. And so not a lot of these other cities working with NOAA had created websites. And so that was something that we did. We wanted to be able to have people have one place where they can learn about the project, sign the forms. We know this was during COVID, so they had some we couldn't do a lot of the training in person. So we did create a website that was really helpful, and that's the h3at.org. Um, I think we were able to get an early story about it from the Houston Public Media, and that was I think good for getting the word out. And then we did get a press release. Well, no, that was after. So the city of Houston did do a mayor's press release, but that was I don't know if that was seeking volunteers or not. It may not have. But we did use the CEC newsletter as a way to kind of get those environmentally
Yeah,
inclined
a
people
good
to
one.
volunteer. And then for this time around, we did want to try to get um, more people from the communities to participate. So since we had our press release about the forestry grant, we've had a few organizations reach out to us saying that they wanted to be involved in some way. And so we kept a list of those organizations. Like, for example, one of those was an organization called Supergirl Shine, and they are like a STEM program for girls. And so we reached back out to them and said, hey, do you guys want to participate in this? And in both campaigns, we were able to offer an incentive to help offset the cost of gas. So it wasn't completely, I mean, that does have a financial impact and burden to be driving, um, for 3 hours on a day. So we were able to the first year was sponsored by Shell, and then this most recent year we were able to get a sponsor from Exxon to pay for gas stipends. Um, and then we also, just tried to use our networks, but I think, what was I going to say? Yeah, having the partnership with all of the other entities that are in the forestry program be involved, um, was also really helpful in terms of, getting more interest.
Perfect. Yeah, I said it was obviously very successful. I was going to ask too about one of the pictures you see, and I think I saw it in the paper about the equipment that you use. Was that
Mhm.
something everybody got one, or how
Yeah,
did?
so let's see, where's the picture? Yeah, so yeah, those are owned by Kappa. So Kappa provides the equipment, and they create the routes, and then we ground truth them to make sure they are that they make sense. Like, for example, some of them might go into a apartment complex or something like that, and that's not really, or it goes into a gated area or something like that. Another issue we kind of have that's unique to Houston is trains. So we tried to avoid getting stuck behind a lot of trains. Um, but and then they also processed the results. But we had to send these units back to them. But they've gotten a lot more. CAP has been doing this for several years now, and so when we did it in 2020, we originally wanted to do like all of Harris County, and they were like, no, you can't. We don't have enough sensors. And so we were limited to the 32 routes. And so this year, we were able to do a much larger area because I think they like 3D print a lot of this stuff now. So they've learned a lot over the different campaign seasons, you know, learned from issues where they might be falling off of the cars or they break too easily or something like that. So we haven't had any issues with the sensors themselves, but we don't get to keep them.
Yeah. Return.
Yeah, we had to
Appreciate
send
that.
them back. Yeah.
And I did have if you have time, mentioned in your summary that the climate action plan that was done by the city of Houston, I guess that's the instigator there. I know there's a lot
Yeah.
of what the kind of a summary of what they did or what you did for them or how that worked.
So in 2020, I actually had a slide on this and I took it out. Resilient Houston is the resilient strategy that Mayor Turner championed. And there was an action in Resilient Houston, it's Action 16, that is to address the issues of urban heat. And so the first sub-action of that was to do this urban heat island mapping campaign. And so they wanted that to be a tool that could be used to inform where solutions such as tree planting, if they were going to pilot a cool pavement project, to do any other kinds of, heat solution type work. Um, this past, I guess, go around, there's a new administration, and so we continued to have the support from the city to participate. I'm not sure what they have in mind to use it for, if not just a communication tool. But it is a resource that will be available to everyone.
That's good. Well, I appreciate it. I don't have anything else. I would mention I was thinking in the background there with your heart building and
Mm-hmm.
in the last year, I think those of us who live and play out here have had a keen awareness of trees. Uh, some in a negative way because so many have been lost, and it's so obvious that when you drive around, even though we still have a lot of cover and we're certainly not a hot zone, you can see the difference
Mm-hmm.
already how it's thinned out and you're seeing things beside the road that you couldn't see before. So it kind of lends it to show us how important they are to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate it again. I said, thanks to you and to HARC. I would encourage everybody to go to the HARC website. Uh, there's more science there than you can ever absorb. But whether it's water or energy or things that like Meredith are doing there, they obviously a ton of wealth there and a wealth of information.
Well, you'll have to invite us back in a year and we can talk to you more about the results from this program.
I certainly will. Again, apologize for the technical problems and for your perseverance. So
Oh,
I
thank you.
believe I have several chats here, just very interesting project and thanks. But I believe I'm not sure I may have the kill button. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and close the meeting out. Thank everybody for coming and for the time.